Okay, let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the Presentation Ideas Conference 2019 version. My name is Garland Colson. I'm your host. I'm also the marketing director of PresentationPoint, who's pulled together this conference to bring all of you together and has gone out and found all these amazing instructors for you. We have 3 sessions today, and we're starting with Richard Goring this morning. And I'm really pleased that Richard's able to join us. We've been aware of his work for some time and have been quite blown away by it. Richard is the director at Bright Carbon, the specialist presentation and e-learning agency. He's helped to write and create thousands of presentations, coached hundreds of teams to present more effectively using visuals, and he has tons of additional resources and tips at brightcarbon.com. So everybody, welcome Richard Goring. I would like to just interject here. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat, and Richard will answer them as he can get to them. So take it away, Richard.
Wonderful, Garland. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this morning or this afternoon, depending upon where you are. Really appreciate it. Let's get going and look at some stuff about PowerPoint, which is what we're going to be talking about today. The first question I often like to ask is, what is it about most presentations that's so, what's the word, bad? Generally speaking, most presentations, let's be honest, are pretty terrible. Your audience is sat there bewildered as to why they are subjecting themselves to this. And there's even a term for it. We call it death by PowerPoint. When was the last time you had death by something and thought it was a good idea to keep going, other than chocolate, which is the exception that proves the rule? Generally speaking, death by PowerPoint comes about because people try to put up everything they want to say on the slide. This is a problem for a number of reasons, but the underlying cognitive psychology is a major issue. Because the way that you try to read something and the way that you try to listen to something is all done in the same part of the brain. It's an area called the phonological loop. This means that in most presentations with lots of text and bullet points and a presenter talking, you get this kind of interference effect where these two streams of information are clashing. And so that actually reduces people's ability to take on board and process the information. So, I mean, that's some of the science very, very briefly, but anecdotally, we all know that presentations with a wall of text are pretty boring, and yet still people do it. If you do that kind of thing, well, then this happens. And because of this, you get that. So you've all read the slide, you just want to move on. You don't want to listen to me talk about it some more. But again, inevitably, the presenter is desperately trying to add some value to whatever is on the slide. That means that one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to ignore you, which really isn't ideal, or you're going to become really irritating, neither of which you particularly want. So the answer, as I hope is obvious from what I'm showing you here, is to get rid of text and bullet points, because that's for documents. And in a presentation, use visuals and diagrams and animations that explain and reinforce your key messages. Critically, if you can synchronize those visuals up with what the presenter is saying, then the audience can benefit from a process called dual coding of information, where they can take on board both of those streams of information and ultimately remember that content more vividly and for longer than they would do otherwise, which means the whole thing is magical and successful. So with that as a premise, and I'm suspecting you all largely agree with that, if you don't, let's have a chat about it. But you then got this thing of, yeah, I want visuals, but how do I do it? Because I've got to use PowerPoint. Well, what I'd like to show you is that I think you can use PowerPoint to draw anything you want and bring it to life using nothing but standard PowerPoint. So get ready in the chat, because I'm going to ask you some questions as we go through. How long do you think it would take to draw, say, that key using nothing but PowerPoint? Just put it in the chat there. Give me a sense of how long you could create it, how long it would take for you to create it, just using standard PowerPoint. Any thoughts, any suggestions there? Several minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes. I reckon about 30 seconds. So I'm going to go to a blank slide now, and most of today's session is going to be all done kind of live in PowerPoint. We're going to do some demo. So fix it for me. And what she's done is added in these. And you think, oh, trying to line all of these up is a pain. So you can select all of these objects here, for example, and you can go to the Home tab on the ribbon and then Arrange over on the right-hand side and use the alignment and distribution tools to do it. And if you do align center there, that's kind of fine. But if you are very eagle-eyed, you'll notice that this compelling box has moved a bit. And if I were to do these over on the right-hand side, the persuasive bit, and again, do Home, arrange, align, and do align center, then everything moves, and it's really frustrating. So there are two problems with this. One is the fact that all of these functions are buried in a submenu of a submenu of a submenu, which I think is ludicrous because they're really valuable. So definitely put them here on your quick access toolbar, but also the fact that it doesn't align to kind of what you would want it to align to. So we've taken those alignment tools in the Bright Slide add-in and allowed you to change how they work a little bit. So over on the left-hand side here, you've got align to selection, which is the default behavior, but you can also choose to align to first selected object. And we've also got some keyboard modifiers, some shortcuts here, so that if you hold the Shift key, then that will automatically adjust to be the first selected. So if I take these here on the right and typically do the align center, you see that everything moves. But if I were to press and hold the Shift key now and then do align center, it's now going to lock it to that first object because that's the one that I selected first at the top. Likewise, this, press and hold the Shift key and then do that, press and hold the Shift key. And so, in a matter of seconds, you can now tidy all of this up very neatly, and all you've had to do is just use the Shift key, for example, so that it's all nice and neat. So it's just kind of enhancing some of the stuff that's there. Super quickly again, here we've got a whole load of icons which are all different sizes, which is kind of annoying if you wanted to do something with them that was all the same. You could go to the Home tab and also the Shape Format tab and you can change the size of them, but I don't know what the size is. So instead you can go to the Bright Slide tab and just choose this function here for match size, and now it's going to make all of them the same size. As an aside, it's at the moment it's kind of all messed up. So again, you can go back to the alignment tools that you've got over here on the left, and there's this little tiny icon there which will allow you to distribute all of these objects to a grid. It's going to come up with a little pop-up window to say, what do you want on your grid? And so we can show here, 2 rows and 3 columns, or 3 rows and 2 columns, or whatever it happens to be. You can change the spacing and whatnot, but just a nice quick way to be able to line everything up nice and neatly. So simply that, okay, and now that it's all done. And then the final thing that I thought would be worth showing you here is something like this, which is really complex. Say you've got lots of different elements. Okay, so we've got here all of these different kind of holders there for different marks on a world map. These might be offices or companies or subsidiaries or whatever it happens to be. Now there's a bit of a problem here because this like tealy turquoisey color, it's not really standing out very much. You can't see it very clearly, and so I could go through if I wanted to change them and do a shift click to select all of them, but it's like I might miss some of them, particularly as they're not very visible. So you can select any object you want, go to the Bright Slide tab and choose this function here called Select Objects. And there you can select all of the objects with any of the same attributes. So by the same fill color or outline color or font size or font name or whatever you want. So I can now choose to select objects with the same fill color. It's now going to pick up all of those, and then you can change the color to whatever you want. And so that can be pretty neat. But once you've done that, you might say, well, I want them to animate, because at the moment there's no animations there and I kind of want them to build in a bit. And so maybe now select all of them and just do all by the same shape type. And now it's going to select every object there regardless of what the color is, so that you've now got the ability to animate them nice and neatly. Now you could animate them manually, but if you want to do something that was a bit more complex, we've also built in animation functions into Bright Slide. And so we've got a function called My Animations, which has a library of animations in them. Now we've built in a couple of very simple ones just to start off with, but you can also edit that animation library to make your own. The point is that any kind of animation sequence or combination of animations that you might use regularly, you can add to this so that you don't have to construct them from scratch every time. And it will save the type of animations, the timing, the effect options that you're putting on them, and so on. So I'm going to choose a nice little animation entrance called a bounce entrance. It's not too bad, it's nice and subtle. It just gives it a little bit of kind of pop, which is nice. And I do that, and now all of these objects have the animation applied to them. And if you look at it, you see that it's actually kind of 3 animations altogether, and it's just done it for me automatically. Now, of course, if I put that into show mode, then what's going to happen is the world map comes up and then all of those objects appear at once, which is okay, but it would be nice if maybe it wasn't quite so abrupt. So again, I'm going to select all of the objects, go to shape type, and under the animations bit, we've got some utilities, including a waterfall delay. Now I've got multiple animations on each object here, but if you bring up waterfall delay, it's going to bring up this window where you can choose what the delay is between all the objects, which types of animations you want to include, because you might not want all of them to be delayed or in a waterfall, what kind of timings you want in there, and also whether it's all the animations in total or just all the animations per object, for example. And if I choose OK now, it takes a second or two just to process because there's a chunk of stuff going on. But now there is going to be a stagger across all of those animations to build them all in. And so now if you put that into show mode, the world map comes in and then it's cascading all the way through. So a really neat way to be able to kind of play around with stuff. And I mean, we're a small company. There's only 60 of us, but we are building up presentations all the time. So I suspect if you have frustrations in PowerPoint, we might have some similar ones. And so we've tried to develop these to solve some of the frustrations that we have. So if you do want the Bright Slide add-in, you can go to brightcarbon.com/brightslide. They'll have a link at the end. It's going to be in the PDF handout that you get from Garland soon as well. But that's just a useful little tool that you might want to try. Again, completely for free. If you do try it out, let us know what you think, because we're going to be updating and improving it all the time. Okay, so that's kind of Bright Slide, which I spent maybe a touch too long on, sorry, but let's go through now to other bits and pieces as well. So we've thought of some of the key techniques about using images in storytelling and using masking and kind of building up animated sequences to a certain extent as well. And that's all very well and good, but what about real world scenarios? So this is where you guys have to start thinking a little bit, because I've been talking for far too long. And I want to ask you to get ready with the chat and give me your initial impressions, please, of this slide. What do you think of it? Yep, absolutely, pretty terrible. I think you're all of the same opinion that it is like that. Absolutely. So clearly that kind of thing doesn't work, and yet it is a real slide. It is something that someone has given us before for head of a training class that we were doing with them, and that's very typical of the kind of slides that you see all over the place. So obviously it doesn't work, and obviously we want to improve it. The big question is how. So I'm going to show it to you again, and I'd like to spend a minute or two with you guys reading it. So I'm going to shut up for that time. And then maybe you can think about ways to improve it. And then once you've had a read of it and thought about that, maybe type in the chat of the different ways that you might improve it using more of a visual approach to tell the story. Does that sound good? Okay, so brace yourselves. Here's the slide. How would you improve that? Okay, some excellent ideas already. Oh, listed, brilliant. So getting rid of a chunk of the text, yep. Graphing some of the results, yes, I love that. So you're doing some comparisons, graphics with the percentages, yep. Changing the background, yeah, obviously, because that's pretty terrible too. Adding visuals to tell the story with the key points, yeah, love it, perfect. Create one slide for each of the paragraphs, yep. Figures, graphics, yeah, absolutely. Okay, loving all of these things. So there's a number of different approaches that you could take. All of these are fantastic. If I've just realized, if anyone has just joined in the last minute, sorry, don't worry, the rest of it isn't like this. We're trying to improve this, which is a terrible slide. So this is obviously pretty terrible. We want to use more visuals instead. Now, there are lots of different ways that you might draw it out. So I'd like the idea of maybe highlighting some of the numbers with figures. You can do a graph or a chart to kind of balance those out. So a bar chart or a pie chart to kind of show the disparity there between the 10% and the 90%. It's really nice if you have a slide like this and you want to improve it, to think, is there a visual that kind of works all the way through that I can use that's kind of consistent? So as I read something like this, once I've woken up, I think, well, I've got like 10% of those who attend, which is people, trainees, which is people, 90% of the people, and individuals and leaders. So this is really all about people. So maybe, can I get a picture of people and then somehow do something with that to represent the rest of the story? And if you're really smart and a little bit arrogant, because I built the slide, you can maybe get a picture with 10 people and highlight one of them to represent the 10% and 9 of them to represent the 90%. And so all of a sudden, instead of the wall of text that you had before, the slide can become this. Right, every year we're spending billions of dollars as an industry on corporate training programs around the world. But that's too much, it's too nebulous, we can't think about that. So let's imagine a realistic scenario of a typical training room, just like this, maybe the one that you're in now. Of all the people just in this one small room, the time and effort they've taken to be there, get there, and the things that they're not doing whilst they're in that room, only she is getting any value from it, which means that for everyone else, it is a complete waste of time. How impactful is that compared to the wall of text that you had to suffer through earlier? What kind of impact is that going to make on your audience compared to the death by PowerPoint that they're normally subjected to? And once you've got that as the initial setup, you can then bring through the final paragraph, which is, so we need to do something about it. And so we need to introduce this SEA concept so that now everyone is actively engaged in that process. So that's the kind of approach that I would recommend. You think through what these visual sequences are, and it doesn't need to take long to actually build. So again, if we go to the main piece there, it's using the same kind of techniques that we've already looked at, but the only thing we've got here is that this is now a layered slide. So there's multiple versions of the same picture there. So if we just go back to this very briefly and just kind of deconstruct it a touch, you've got actually several pictures to be able to tell that story. So the first one here, this initial setup is kind of a grayscale picture. So that's layer 1. Then the second picture comes up where you've got the blurred grayscale for the 90%, that's picture 2. You've got the color cut out of the woman for the 10%, that's picture 3. And you've got the full color version coming all the way through, which is picture 4. So we've got 4 images all layered on top of each other to tell that story. So going to just a base level image version here, I've just got the one picture. What I'm going to do is copy that picture using Control and C, and then work through the layers to be able to build up that story. So I've copied the picture, Control C, so it's in the clipboard, and I'm just going to work one image at a time. So the first thing that I want to do is select the image, and this is going to be that base image, which is going to be the grayscale. Now, we looked at how to do this before. Remember, you go to the Picture Format tab on the ribbon, and over on the left-hand side, you've got Color, and here you can apply a grayscale color wash to the image. So really basic, nice and easy to do. Then I'm going to paste using Control and V, so I've got the image, and annoyingly, remember when you paste stuff, it pastes it just to the right and just below the original, so it's very important that you line all of these things up, because if you're going to use this layering technique, any kind of misalignment of the objects or mismatching is going to cause the thing to jump, and that's really distracting. So this is the second layer. This is going to be the 90% piece. So you can blur it out, again, using PowerPoint. Go back to the Picture Format tab, and over on the left next to color is this thing called Artistic Effects, which includes about 20 different ways to completely ruin your image. I mean, why you'd ever want inverse neon, I have no idea. But there's one function, and really only one, called blur, which is on the right-hand side, second from the top there. And that's really useful because it, well, blurs the image. And that's great because it takes away people's focus and attention on something. It gives you a sense of there's something there, but it means that you're not going to get distracted by the details. So you can apply a blur to it. You can also, again, on the Picture Format tab, apply a color wash to it, and we're going to apply the grayscale, and now that's the 90% done. Now I'm going to paste once more and again line them up, and this is where you want to create the color cutout of the woman for the 10%. So here I'm going to zoom into that part of the image, and I'm going to use our old friend the freeform tool to be able to trace around her. So again, that's into the shape, second in from the right-hand side under lines, this little squashed Pac-Man thing, and you can use that to trace around. Now, I'm only going to be fairly rough for three reasons. One is you guys don't particularly want to spend a lot of time there watching me be really precise cutting this out, but also I'm quite zoomed in, so you won't notice any kind of small imperfections by the time you zoom out again. And also I'm cutting out this picture of the woman against a backdrop of herself. So again, you won't really notice very much if it's kind of slightly off compared to if you were trying to cut out something against a solid background, for example. But now I've got that there, that's the color cut out of the woman. I can now select the picture as the thing that I want to keep and the color cutter to the woman, and you can use those merge shape tools from earlier to be able to manipulate those two shapes relative to each other. This time go to the Shape Formats tab on the ribbon, and under Merge Shapes on the left here, you want to choose the one called Intersect, which keeps just the overlapping portion of the two objects, which in this case will be the color picture part of that woman. Now select the 90% and the 10% layers, so the blurred gray and the color cutout. Go to the Animations tab and just add in a simple fade animation for that. Paste once more, Control and V. This is going to be the final fourth layer over the top. Let's just also, whilst we're there, add in a chevron because we just complete the whole thing. So let's just build all of that in there like that. Line that up somewhere in the middle. I'm just going to copy the text here because you don't particularly want to watch me type all of that out, but you get the sense of it there. And then select both of these, and I'm going to add in a simple wipe animation, and from the left is what we did before. And so now, again, in a matter of moments, you've got, we're spending billions of dollars on corporate training program, only she's getting any value, waste of time for everyone else, which means we need to do something different, which is this SEA, so that everyone is actively engaged. And it's all nice and quick and easy, in this case using just a few layers, but you can build that up. Incidentally, you don't need to have it on layers. You could split this out over several slides, but I and the rest of the Bright Carbon team are of the mentality that we put everything on one slide because we charge by the slide when we're creating stuff for people. But you obviously don't need to be restricted by that. So it could be split over 3 slides, and you don't have to have the animations and the layers, and it would be exactly the same in slideshow mode for all of the people that you're presenting to. Okay, so bringing out visual storytelling sequences, I think, can work really very nicely. And then once you've got some of those visuals, you want to try to bring them to life. And this is where I think the new Morph transition in PowerPoint can really make things fantastic. Now, Morph is this new transition in Office 365. Just, if you wouldn't mind, actually, just type in the chat. Do you have Office 365? Have you used Morph? Do you know what I'm talking about? Because then I'll know what kind of level to take it to. Okay, so a mixture. All right, well, let's go through all of it then, and we should still have plenty of time. That's fine. Okay, so Office 365 is definitely where it's at. It's the new subscription service for Office. If you don't have it already, you will have it soon because Microsoft is very aggressively pushing it, and it's how you will get Office in the future. It also means that you're getting updates frequently, and Morph dropped on us maybe 3 years ago now. So it's not kind of terribly new, and yet still people don't use it. What am I talking about? Let's just go through and demonstrate it quite neatly. So Morph is a type of transition. If you are not aware, you can go to the Transitions tab on the ribbon, and you can choose from all of these different types of transitions as different ways to move from one slide to the next. And all of these transitions are terrible. For example, origami bird is perhaps the worst of a very bad bunch. You do not want to do that kind of thing in your presentations. But there is one very neat transition which you should use, which is called Morph. Let me show you how it works. I am going to draw a box over here on the left-hand side of this slide. I'm going to duplicate the slide, so I've got 2 of them. So Control and D is the keyboard shortcut for that. So you see the 2 slides here. And then on this second slide, I'm going to take this box and move it over to the right-hand side. Okay, so far, so basic. If you then go to the Transitions tab on the ribbon and choose Morph, what PowerPoint will do is it'll say, oh, okay, that's the same box in a different place. I will seamlessly morph from one slide to the next. And so now you're thinking, oh, that's interesting, because without any kind of animation, it's just automatically picking that up. That's really cool. Now, whenever anything new comes out in PowerPoint, the Bright Carbon team and I, we always think, right, that's really cool. Let's break it. And so you think, right, let's challenge it. What if I were to not only move it, but maybe change the shape of it, shrink it down, and maybe change the color of it? What's going to happen then? And PowerPoint goes, oh, okay, that's the same box, just in a different place and a different size and a different color. I can handle that. And so all of a sudden, you can do some really funky things, like we've got a small green circle on the top left. You can now use Morph to make that into a large purple circle on the bottom right. And that's kind of cool beans and really nice, but let's be honest, it's not going to help you to tell a story. So what if you've got, say, a complex slide like this? That is a nice looking graphic, it's a nice looking process, but it's a terrible slide because you can't see the detail. There's no way you're going to be able to interpret that properly as a single slide. But maybe you could say, here's our new starter process, and now what I'm going to do is take you through it. So this is the overall process, and now we're going to go into strategy and planning. And then move across here to the launch event. And you move through and around all the different elements of the process, talking about the details of them in a format that you can see them, before you finally come back at the end to say, and so here's the overall process. And that's like the PDF or the handout that you give to people. And that's all just done using Morph. So if I go back here, you can see there's the whole slide with a whole diagram on. If I just zoom out a touch and go to the next slide, you'll see I've taken this diagram and then just made it much bigger. So I've made it much larger and moved it off the edge of the slide so that now only this portion here is on the visible area of the slide. And again, PowerPoint Morph will think, oh, okay, that's the same diagram, just in a different place and larger. I will make it kind of seamlessly move. And again, on the next slide, now you shift it over to the left. Now only this is visible on the slide. So you can do all sorts of very funky things kind of nice and easily. And that's kind of really helpful for storytelling, but you can also take it further because, I mean, you could, if you had enough time, do all of that with animations, with gross shrink animations and motion paths. But there are some things that you can't do. So for example, say you have a complex image like this. What if you wanted to highlight various bits of it without kind of zooming into the whole thing? What if you just wanted to create like a zoom lens? And again, you can do that all using Morph. So how have we created that effect? So let me show you how we've built it. This uses images and it requires a little bit of kind of getting your head around, but once you understand it, it becomes very simple. So I've got a blank slide here. I'm going to click on that and just go to insert a picture. So there's my beach. Okay, so nice and simple. And I'm just going to duplicate that image. So I've got two of them there and then line one on top of the other. Okay. Now that you've got that, I'm going to select this top image, go to the picture format tab on the ribbon and choose crop. Now you can crop this down so that you focus on just the area that you want to highlight. So the pool up there on the top left, for example. Okay. So with that, you can now kind of focus attention. I don't really like the rectangle kind of there, so I want this to be a bit rounded. So you can go back to the picture format tab and choose crop, but choose the drop down menu. And here you can choose to crop to a shape, and I'm going to choose to crop to a circle. Now the annoying thing is that it's actually kind of an oval shape there, which I don't like again. I don't like the aesthetics of it. So I'm going to go back to the crop drop down and choose to crop to an aspect ratio. And here you can choose a specific aspect ratio. I'm going to choose 1:1 square. And so now you've got a nice perfect circle that you're focusing attention on. Now, of course, we can't see that there is this circular crop there because it's cropped against its own kind of image, but it is there, believe me, there you go. So I need to do two things to make it stand out. One, I'm just going to put like a little border around it. You could use a line. I'm going to go to the picture format tab, picture effects, and just choose a shadow there, just sit subtly there. And then I'm also going to increase the size of it so that now you get this sense of it kind of increasing in size. It's a clear kind of zoom image there, like a lens. Once you've got that, you duplicate the slide. So I've got two of them here. And on the second slide, move this zoom lens so that it sits over something else on the slide. So say the red umbrella there, for example. Let's just move that over there like that. Now, obviously that looks terrible, but if you think about it, the way that crop works, if I go back to crop, is that it doesn't actually cut down the picture as such. It's perhaps more useful to think about it as a specific window through which you can view the picture. And so if you open up crop, you see the rest of the picture is still there, and you can just see through this circular viewing window. And I can now move that image within that viewing window to focus there on the red umbrella. And so now, if you add in the morph transition, PowerPoint goes, oh, okay, it's the same picture in a different place with a different crop. And because the images underneath aren't removed, it's moving that viewing window all the way through that image. So that's how you then see all of the other bits in between to create this zoom lens type effect. And once you understand that, the idea that you can get something to crop nice and easily, it doesn't have to just be the same image, for example, with something larger. Maybe you can take an image like this, which is blurred, and then you can reveal the unblurred version. Or maybe you can take something like this, which is two different pictures. And so here I've got like a nice blue person, and we're highlighting there the vascular system underneath. Bring that out, and you can now talk about, well, if we're thinking about it, a wonderful topic about deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolisms, but you can now take people through the detail of what is happening inside the body at each of these different points. And that's just done using two images. So here are the two images. We've got the person on the left and the vascular system in the middle. Let's just again show it to you. Get rid of that one because we've already done it, but maybe just overlay the muscular system over the top, for example. Same deal. And now I'm going to choose to crop this image so that it crops on just the top there like that. Duplicate the slide, crop it, and then recrop it so that it's now focused down on the feet instead, for example, like that. Add in the morph transition, and what PowerPoint is now going to do is it's going to pick up, here's the morph with the bit at the top, which you can't see because it's just hidden there, and then go through and highlight all of the other bits within the image. And now you've got the latest body scanning technology or whatever it happens to be. So you can do all of this nice and easily just using Morph. Okay, so Morph, very powerful. I highly recommend that you all check it out. Final thing that I wanted to do is just talk about more interactive content. And then we'll hopefully have a couple of minutes for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, let me know. I see there's one there. David, I'll answer that in just a second. So all of that is great in terms of visual storytelling stuff, but what if you don't know what your audience actually wants to talk about yet? This is where having interactive presentations can be very valuable. And a great way to build in interactive presentations is to use trigger animations. So trigger animations are just like regular animations that you would click through, but they work are by clicking on any object on the slide. So here I've got a slide talking about different technology influence areas, for instance, and we've got 3 different elements. We've obviously made these kind of clickable with the little circular bits there, just to kind of give a sense of these are active pieces. And you can then tell me what you're interested in. So you might say, well, we care about scale. Okay, great. Let's click on scale, and it's going to bring up the relevant content. And then someone else in the team says, oh, we want to know about security. Obviously, security is important. Let's click on that, and it brings it up. But none of you care about continuity. Well, no problem. Let's click onto the next slide and go through it. But someone else might, so we go back to the slide and say, okay, continuity, and that now brings it in. So this is all just done using trigger animations. So the way that this works is nice and simple. Here, for example, we've got a slide. Let's just do this one here. Different slides that you might give, or different types of food rather, that you might eat. But some of them aren't quite as healthy as you might think. So you might expect that you can eat a chunk of this stuff, but actually nutritionists say maybe you should limit your intake. Whereas these foods you can fill your boots with and have as much as you like. Now, if you wanted to, I could just tell you that, but it's not really that exciting. And so what you could do instead is maybe mix it all up, and you can say, hey, here's a thing for you to ponder. Which of these foods do you think you could eat as much as you like of? Which of these foods maybe are surprisingly unhealthy compared with what you might expect? And so you can ask people that, they can shout out their answers, and you can now click on any of the pictures, and it's going to turn all of the text different colors depending upon whether it's right or wrong. And that's all done using trigger animations. So if we go to the animations tab on the ribbon and open up the animation pane, you can see here on the right, we've got all of these different color change animations. So the apples one I've not done, so let's do that. I'm going to select this apples text, go to add animation, and just choose a yellow emphasis animation called fill color, which will now allow the color of that object to change. I'm going to tweak the animation timing because I don't like the fact that it takes 2 seconds, it's too long. And also next to the add animation button here, you can choose effect options where you can change how the effect works. And in this case, I'm going to change the color so that it's a nice green color because you can have as many apples as you like. Now, if I were just to go into regular show mode, what's going to happen is I click and that comes up, and obviously I don't want to. I want it to only appear if I click on the apples picture. So you can select that animation. On the animations tab in the ribbon, under the animation pane button here, you can choose trigger, and then you can choose to trigger that animation when you click on any other object on the slide. I'm now going to choose the apples picture there like that, and now you see that animation jumps down to a new part of the animation pane down at the bottom here. And so now what's going to happen is when I bring this up, I can click on the apples picture, and now that's going to turn green. And so that's how we've made this kind of thing work. So it's an interesting way to be able to create more interactive content where you're branching things, or you're kind of creating more interactive elements where you're asking people questions, lots of different pieces that you can do. And that could also be combined with hyperlinks as well, where you can jump to other slides or custom shows, or even the new Zoom transition of the new Zoom function if you'd like to be able to navigate around things. But triggers, I think, are very underutilized in presentations and can be really powerful. Okay. So with that, I'll just kind of very briefly conclude, shameless plug alert. These are all the things that we do at Bright Carbon. So we spend our days creating presentations, e-learning, animations, and infographics. If you would like any help doing any of that, please feel free to get in touch. But more specifically and more seriously, we do a lot of this kind of stuff. We really like to share with people in the community, just like you. So if you're interested in doing any of these things and learning more about how to do it, if you go to the Bright Carbon website, brightcarbon.com, you'll find loads of completely free resources and tutorials on how to do things related to all of those different elements. If you go to brightcarbon.com/mindblown, you'll find a couple of little video tutorials similar to these kinds of things today, but of course there's also the recording and the PDF that you'll get, so you can check those out. And we also do completely free every Thursday pretty much 30-minute masterclasses on a variety of topics, so check those out. If anyone would like to try the Bright Slide add-in that we mentioned earlier on, you can go to brightcarbon.com/brightslide. You can download it there. Again, it's completely for free. We enjoy sharing stuff with people. If you like it, great, let us know. If there's any problems, again, let us know there, because we're going to be adding to it quite frequently, which I think is good. And if anyone would like to get in touch, happy to answer questions now for a couple of minutes, but also just follow us on the Twitter @BrightCarbon, or get in touch, info@BrightCarbon as well. Really happy to answer any of those questions. So a couple of questions there. If anyone has any more, we can do it. But just before we get into the questions, Garland, thank you so much indeed for putting this on, for organising and bringing everyone together. Not just everyone who's listening now, but also all of the other presenters too. It's been a fantastic thing, and I strongly recommend that you all stick around for the next 2 sessions as well, for the next couple of hours.
Thanks, Richard. We loved having you. One of the things I love about this is I get to sit here and learn while everybody's presenting, and I go, how come I don't know that? And I use PowerPoint daily. I mean, I speak all the time, right? And I'm going, yep. How do I not know this? So this has just been a great learning experience for me as well.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Cool. So a couple of questions just super quickly to answer. Rita, you talked about Morph in earlier versions of PowerPoint. It's really only for Office 365 or Office 2019. There are instances where it works in Office 2016, but you can't access it. So if you have a Morph-enabled presentation in some versions of Office 2016, it will work, but you can't kind of create new stuff, if you like. But earlier versions, it won't work at all. If anyone wants to, there's a recording which you'll get. Garland, maybe you can tell us when the recording will be available.
Yeah, we are recording these sessions. Now, I did have my computer crash during the presentation, but it looks like it didn't affect you guys, but it did affect some of the recording. So we may have missed a bit, but it sounds like Richard has a lot of great videos anyway at his website on how to do all these things. So chances are we'll be able to fill in anything there that was missing. But so, should be available in a week or so.
Cool. And then on that as well, when you get that, there's a PDF here. If anyone wants it immediately, just drop me an email or email info@brightcarbon.com and we'll send it to you. And this PDF has kind of step-by-step instructions of everything that I talked about. So, here's the Bright Slide bit, for example, the quick access toolbar, thinking about how you do freeform shapes and whatnot, and how all of they work. I talked about iconography and photos, and you can see all of these different bits that you can access. And then this is one of the ones that we did at the start, where you're kind of highlighting the image. Here's the masking technique. Here's the building it up. So you can kind of see the instructions and then also click for a video link or video tutorial on that. So if any of the recording has messed up, you'll be able to access all of those as well. And then again, any questions, please feel free to get in touch. Really happy to help out.
Great. Thank you so much, Richard. That was fantastic. So I would highly encourage all of you to visit the Bright Carbon website as well as Richard's other areas to be able to access all this information. And wow, I learned a lot.